The correction of fear. You believe that being afraid is involuntary, but I have told you many times that only constructive acts should be involuntary. I said that Christ's control can take over everything that doesn't matter, and Christ's guidance can direct everything that does, if you so will. Fear cannot be Christ-controlled, but it can be self-controlled. Fear is always associated with what does not matter and prevents me from controlling it. The correction is therefore a matter of your will, because its presence shows that you have raised the unimportant to a higher level than it warrants. You have thus brought it under your will, where it does not belong. This means you feel responsible for it. The level confusion here is perfectly obvious. The reason that I cannot control fear for you is that you are attempting to raise to the mind level the proper content of lower order reality. I do not foster level confusion, but you can will to correct it. You would not tolerate insane behavior on your part, and would hardly advance the excuse that you could not help it. Why should you tolerate insane thinking? There is a fallacy here you would do well to look at clearly. You believe that you are responsible for what you do, but not for what you think. The truth is that you are responsible for what you think, because it is only at this level that you can exercise choice. What you do comes from what you think. You cannot separate the two by giving autonomy to your behavior. Behavior is controlled by me automatically as soon as you place what you think under my guidance. Whenever you are afraid, it is a sure sign that you have allowed your mind to miscreate. That is, you have not allowed me to guide it. It is pointless to believe that controlling the outcome of misthought can result in real healing. When you are fearful, you have willed wrongly. This is why you feel you are responsible for it. You must change your mind, not your behavior, and this is a matter of will. You do not need guidance except at the mind level. Correction belongs only at the level where causation is possible. The term does not really mean anything at the symptom level where it cannot work. The correction of fear is your responsibility. When you ask for release from fear, you are implying that it isn't. You should ask instead for help in the conditions which have brought the fear about. This always entails a willingness on the part of your separated mind. At this level, you can help it. You are much too tolerant of mind wandering, thus tacitly condoning your mind's miscreations. The particular result never matters, but this fundamental error does. The fundamental correction is always the same. Before you will to do anything, ask me if your will is in accord with mine. If you are sure that it is, there will be no fear. Fear is always a sign of strain, which arises whenever the will to do conflicts with what you do. This situation arises in two major ways. 1. You can will to do conflicting things, either simultaneously or successively. This produces conflicting behavior, which would be tolerable to the self, though not necessarily to others, except for the fact that the part of the will that wants something else is outraged. 2. You can behave as you think you should, without entirely willing to do so. This produces consistent behavior, but entails great strain within the self. If you think about it, You will realize that in both cases, the will and the behavior are out of accord, resulting in a situation in which you are doing what you do not will. This arouses a sense of coercion, which usually produces rage. The anger then invades the mind, and projection in the wrong sense becomes likely. Depression or anxiety is virtually certain. Remember that whenever there is fear, it is because you have not made up your mind. Your will is split, and your behavior inevitably becomes erratic. Correcting at the behavioral level can shift the error from the first type to the second, but will not obliterate the fear. It is possible to reach a state in which you bring your will under my guidance without much conscious effort, but this implies the kind of habit pattern which you have not developed dependably as yet. Although people say that God will never ask you to do more than you can, they do not understand it themselves. God cannot ask more than you will. The strength to do comes from your own undivided will to do. There is no strain in doing God's will, as soon as it is also your own. The lesson here is quite simple, but particularly apt to be overlooked. I will therefore repeat it, urging you to listen. Only your mind can produce fear. It does so whenever it is conflicted in what it wills, thus producing inevitably strain, because your willing and doing become discordant. This cannot be corrected by better doing, but it can be corrected by higher willing. The first corrective step is knowing that it is fear. After taking this step, you might benefit temporarily by adding another step before going on with the corrective process. Try saying to yourself that you must have willed not to love somehow or somewhere, or the fear which arises from behavior-will conflict could not have happened. Then follow the previous instructions. If you consider what the process really means, it is nothing more than a series of pragmatic steps in the larger process of accepting the at-one-ment as the remedy. From this viewpoint, the steps can be reworded as follows. 1. Know first this is fear. 2. Fear arises from lack of love. 3. The only remedy for lack of love is perfect love. 4. Perfect love is the at-one-ment. The final procedural step is inherent in the last statement. We have emphasized that the miracle, or the expression of at-one-ment, is always a sign of real respect from the worthy to the worthy. This worth is re-established by the at-one-ment. It is obvious, then, that when you are afraid, you have placed yourself in a position where you need at-one-ment, because you have done something loveless, having willed without love. This is precisely the situation for which the at-one-ment was offered. The need for the remedy inspired its establishment. As long as you recognize only the need for the remedy, you will remain fearful. However, as soon as you use the remedy, you have also abolished the fear. This is how true healing occurs. It might help if you say this prayer to me. I would like to pray that my will be united with thine, recognizing that thy perfect love will suffice or correct for my imperfect love. I pray that I may accept the at-one-ment with conviction, recognizing its inestimable worth and my own divine worth as part of this identification with thine. I pray that my fear be replaced by an active sense of thy love, and thy continual willingness to help me overcome the split or divided will which is responsible for my difficulty with this. I accept the divinity of the messages I have received, and affirm my will in both accepting and acting upon the at-one-ment principle. Here I am. The major problem that you have is the continuing split will, which naturally interferes with your true identification. To the extent that you hold onto this split, it will take longer to get through and will markedly interfere with your own integration efforts. Reliance has to be placed on me, which is sufficient once you do this without distanciation or division in loyalties. This will be strengthened through a continual affirmation of the goal you want to achieve and an awareness of its inevitability. In this way, you will perceive and know your true worth and the importance of maintaining a complete identification.